And they said, oh, you can't land on that island. The beaches are loaded with mines, and throughout the forest there are mines. So what we're doing, they said, was we're systematically getting these mines on the beaches first so we can land the equipment. And then they said we'll run a corridor up toward the main town up there.
Okay.
And they went up there, and I went up to the town after I landed. They pulverized the town. I guess the Japanese didn't give it up. They stayed in the buildings and so forth. So they just shot the buildings out. So when I was there, there were a lot of half buildings there. Most of them made out of some kind of stucco, I think, something like that.
Okay.
And when I went there, I saw a bulldozer. And of course, I saw this bulldozer, and so what was he doing here? He had a front end loader, and he was picking up Japanese dead bodies. He had a big trench, maybe as long as this house, if not longer. And he'd drop them in, go back and get some more, drop them in. Now the Japanese, like us, they had dog tags, so they could be identified later. And the U.S. would tell the Japanese where they buried guys and so forth, pretty much. But the stench, I couldn't stay there very long. So I left, went back to my area. When we landed, they said, when you land, you'll find yellow ribbons just off the beach. And you can walk over on the beach there, because that's been demined. And talking about demining, this friend of mine that I was telling you about, the Navy guy, he came to me and he said, what are you doing with your sack on and all that? Ready? You look like you're ready to go overboard. He said, I am. I said, why? And we were over near Ie Shima by this time, but I didn't think he'd go. He said, oh yeah. He said, when I first got there in the Navy, he said, we have some courses here to take. He took a course in demining.
Oh.
That was his experience. They saw it in his record. He said, let's go over.
Oh.
I never saw him again, but I probably never would have seen him anyway.
Yeah. So you don't know.
So he went. A few days later, they told us, okay, we're going to have landing craft. Those that the front opens up. You land on a beach. We'll have landing craft ready, and just stay within those yellow lines. So what we saw there was the tape along the beach, and then we saw this roadway like where they demined. And we went about half a day up this roadway, and there was this sign that saddened all of us. It said, on this spot, Ernie Pyle was killed, April 23rd, 1945.
Oh.
April 23rd. Oh, so
Something
this is
like
within
that.
the last few months, right?
Yeah.
Because it was August.
Yeah. So he was the correspondent.
Yeah.
Oh,
He made his name in Europe. He'd hop into foxholes with the guys, talk to them, where you from? I'm from Oshkosh, Michigan, or wherever it is, and so forth. He'd tell the story, and then he'd put in his letter. And so
nice.
people just read that, especially the military people. We read it, Army, Navy. Of course, there was no Air Force at that time. It was all part of Army or Navy.
Oh, yeah, I was trying to think about, like, these big bombers. How did they make it to Japan? I mean, where did they leave from? And if they didn't leave from Hawaii, then they had to get them to these intermediate islands somewhere, and they didn't, I mean, you know, you could put a fighter on an aircraft carrier, but you're not putting a B-52 bomber or whatever on.
I think they went from island to island until they got there.
They just okay, so they got the airstrips.
Yeah, because like
shape.
Wake and Midway.
We didn't
I
have
see,
big
that's
bombers.
why
See,
they're
we didn't
fighting.
have big bombers. We couldn't handle big bombers. We had these 2-engine fighter Corsairs or something they called them.
Yeah.
They were fighter bombers. In other words, they had some guns on them they could shoot, and then they had some bombs on the wings. They could release the bomb, so forth. So anyway, we continued on, and they said, "Okay, gentlemen, make a slit trench." Usually they tend to make a foxhole and get down in a foxhole, but be careful. There are habu and mamushi snakes that are both poisonous, and they might be down in a foxhole. So it might be better to take your chance with the bomb than with the snake if it's down there. But
So what's a slit trench versus a?
well, slit trench is easier to dig. You just get the surface, get it below your surface, so that when there's any machine gun fire, you end up not being in a line of fire. Now, if the Jap's right over your head and he's got a gun,
Yeah.
it doesn't do you any good.
Yeah.
So we made these slit trenches and went in there. He said, have your rifle ready, put your bayonet on, and do the best you can. This is our first night. We got to look around and see how we can defend ourselves. So it's the first night. We had this sort of little compound, and they put up sandbags on the corner, on the four corners.
Okay.
And they had some guys go, volunteers go. I don't think they were trained Marines or anything like that, because halfway through the night we heard all this fire gun thing, boom, 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 boom. And in the morning, when things were clear, they said, "Where are you shooting at?" "Oh, we thought we heard something over there, so we took a shot." They shot back at us, so we ducked. Oh, you guys. So there was during the night, a little disturbing. Didn't know whether Japanese or whether it was Americans. But then we moved over into our quarters, pitched tents. Well, eventually we pitched tents and so forth. And I had a nice area. Being a master sergeant, they treated me fine.
So they had
the highest rank in non-commissioned officers.
Yeah.
so they had kind of taken over the island, bombed it or whatever, and then they put you on the island, but you're not sort of set up there. There's no like campment or whatever to go into. So the first night you're basically on the ground,
The woods.
hanging out, and then eventually you sort of build this out and build a perimeter around it and all that kind of thing.
Clear an area out for headquarters, and I was in headquarters there.
Yeah.
And
then what did your group do?
Huh?
What did your group do? You were doing the electric.
I was the communications chief, so my job was to make sure that we kept communication with the rest of the world, especially Okinawa. So we had to lay a line, cable. We had radio and cable. We dropped this cable. I didn't do anything, just paperwork. But we had a crew who were instructed to lay this cable and put a terminal on Ie Shima, and then put one on Japan, where it was secure. And then we also had radio contact. We even had radio contact with Guam.
Oh.
And this is like weeks later or so. And once we had an accumulation of ships in our harbor, they came and bombed, and we didn't have any smoke to hide our ships. So what they did was a ship would come in and the Japanese would figure we had no night fighters, so as I said, still no night fighters even when we were in Ie Shima. They said, we just have to do the best we can. So our colonel, and he was a major, then he promoted to colonel, was my boss. He was so happy. He said, a huge tower came, we can contact Guam. So I had very little to do with that, but he took over that. And the next morning, the thing's in the water.
Oh.
Because
they bombed it.
They bombed it, took it out.
So he said, we're going to start from ground zero.
Oh.
Let's start from ground zero, go to Guam or someplace, get another one. So they did. And we established communication with Guam. Once you establish communication with Guam, you got communication with the world. It's huge.
I'm gonna run out and get my iPad so I can get a map of this.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's cool.